Good evening and welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News, where we discuss the important events that would have taken place in our country over the past week or so. And as is usual, I want to begin by welcoming all of our viewers who are joining us on television in Region 5, Mahaika to West Coast Berbice, across the Berbice River, East Bank, Berbice, then, of course, right along the Quarantine Coast, all the way to Molson Creek. All of you good folks who are joining us on television, welcome once again to another program of Issues in the News. I also want to take this opportunity to welcome our listeners and viewers who are joining us on Freedom Radio from Rob Street, Georgetown, Guyana. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. And last but not least, the tens of thousands who are joining us on Facebook Live right across the length and breadth of Guyana, the Caribbean, North America, Europe, and even further afield. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. Good evening to Shelley Mangru. Good evening to Jack Dish. Good evening to Jasmine Baldeo, New York. Viva Deo Saran, New York. Kemraj Prasad watching from Canada. Lynette Mahabal is watching. Bharat Mangar, Tulsi Muraladhar, Premnath Ramsuchit, Joycelyn Bishop Hussain, Neetu Singh, Neetu Marat Singh, Rohan Ramkisoon, and so many thousands of you who are joining us on Facebook Live. Welcome to another program of Issues in the News. I want to take this opportunity to invite you to press that share button on your telephone, on your computer, on your laptop, so that this program can be shared with all your friends and your followers. Press that share button on the television screen or on the telephone so that this program can be enjoyed by your friends and followers, and we can have the largest possible audience tonight in our discussions. I want to begin by extending Happy New Year, Happy 2022 to every single one of you. May this new year bring you good health, bring you great success, and bring you prosperity. May all your ambitions, all your goals, all your wishes for the year 2022 be realized and much more. Happy New Year to each and every one of you. I want to thank all of you for patronizing me and for being with me over the past year. We had a long, challenging year. We had many hurdles. We overcame them, and the year in the end was a successful one. I want to thank you for your solid support, not only to this program, but your solid support to the government of Guyana. And I thank you for continuing to be part of this program. The year 2022 promises a lot of excitement. The year 2022 is a landmark year in the development trajectory of our country. The year 2022 will see the beginning of some of the largest transformational projects ever executed in our country. The year 2022 will begin to lay the foundation of modern and prosperous Guyana. The year 2022 will see the beginning of the construction of a new harbor bridge across the Demerara River, and will see the beginning of a new set of roadways right across the length and breadth of Guyana. The Linden to Mabura Road is on the slate. The Parika to Houston Road across the bridge. The Bartica, the road along the eastern bank of the Essequibo River is on the cards. The railway embankment along the east coast of Demerara is on the card. Also, a number of important roadways in Berbice in particular. Farm to market roads are on the agenda. The gas to shore project is supposed to get off the ground. The Deepwater Harbor in Berbice, at the mouth of the Berbice River, is supposed to start. Work will begin on the possibility on potential oil refinery on the east bank of the Berbice River, and many, many more important infrastructural work will begin this year that will lay the foundation for a modern Guyana. Significantly, this year will be the first year that Guyana will be receiving proceeds from its rich oil and gas sector that will be used to develop Guyana and will be used to transform the lives of every single Guyanese. All of that is scheduled to happen this year. This year, as I said, is a landmark year for the developmental agenda of Guyana. There are so many major projects that will kick off this year. This year we will witness the presentation of the largest budget in Guyana's history, and that budget will lay the foundation of the developmental explosion to which I am referring. Every single Guyanese, irrespective of race, irrespective of ethnicity, irrespective of political affiliation, will benefit from the government's developmental agenda that is scheduled to roll out in the year 2022. This year, my friends, is the year that generations of Guyanese have been waiting and yearning for. I said in my speech in the Parliament on the local content bill that this generation of Guyanese is definitely the most fortunate and the most blessed generation of Guyanese in our country's history. We have a history of underdevelopment. We have a history of lack of economic advancement. We have a history of a lack of social progress. All of that ought to begin to change this year. This year is the year that will transform Guyana into a completely different place. And it is the expectation of your government, it is the hope of our government that all hands will be on deck. We don't want to leave any grouping of Guyanese behind. We want everyone to be on this train to prosperity. This is not the time for divisive politics. This is not the time for ethnic strife. This is not the time for racial insularity. This is the time for cohesion. This is the time for togetherness. This is the time for national unity. We no longer have to fight for breadcrumbs at the table. We have a destiny now that will be fulfilled and will be fulfilled in a major way. And we are structuring the developmental agenda of this country so as not to concentrate too much on the oil and gas sector, but to use the proceeds from that sector to develop our traditional sectors. We have to transform the agriculture sector. We have to move agriculture production from primary production to value added, to manufacturing. We have to hit the export market with our fresh food and fresh fruits and vegetables. This is the time to build the foundation for those industries to take off. This is the time where we have to address our energy needs and we have to diversify our energy dependency. We can't continue to depend on fossil fuel. We have to broaden our energy agenda and diversify into areas of renewable energy, wind energy, solar energy, and most importantly, hydropower energy, while at the same time we pursue our gas to shore project. This is the time where we have to change the economic equation of our country. No longer must we be part of a third world. We must be part of a second world and eventually the first world. And this is the time, this is the year where the foundation for that type of transformation will have to take place. Every Guyanese is expected to be on board, and that is why we were so aggressive and we were so um, emphatic in ensuring that we complete the local content legislation for this year. We had to complete it. Every day that that local content legislation is delayed is a loss for Guyana, is a loss for Guyanese. Every single day that we delay that piece of legislation, Guyanese are losing opportunities. Guyanese companies are losing opportunities. Guyanese are losing jobs in the sector. And these jobs are going to non-Guyanese. And we had to bring a halt to that. The bill has now been assented to. It is now law. And the Ministry of Natural Resources will be spearheading the initiative to implement the legislation, to bring it into fruition. In short, that legislation mandates the oil sector to engage Guyanese companies and engage Guyanese in some 43 different areas of economic endeavors as a matter of law. As a matter of law and based upon a schedule. I know that some sectors are not comfortable about the allocation that they have received, but we have repeatedly made the point that this is a work in progress, that this is a fluid exercise, that as we assess our local capacity, we will make the adjustments to ensure that our output and our resources bears a reasonable relationship with national capacity and the demands of the sector. But we have to start somewhere. And I believe that the local content legislation has sufficient foundation for us to build upon a self-sufficient Guyana. And that is the whole idea behind getting the legislation out and starting to implement it. I take this opportunity to appeal to every single Guyanese to ensure that they put themselves on the local register. The local register will be online and there will be a hard copy that will be administered by the Secretariat. And that applies to Guyanese companies as well as Guyanese citizens. You know, as we have articulated so many times, the Guyanese companies have a very all-embracing definition, and it's not difficult, it's not easy to circumvent the law because of the broad nature of the definition. Guyanese companies are companies incorporated in Guyana with some 51% of the shareholding and voting power residing in Guyanese. So it's not a silent shareholding, it's a voting shareholding, an active shareholding, 51% and over. Then the hierarchical structure of the company, the management must also be 75% Guyanese, as well as the unskilled labor force must be 90% Guyanese. I don't think that anyone can want a better and more embracing definition. The definition also includes partnerships as well. So it embraces almost every type of business operations, legal business operations in Guyana. Somebody had raised the issue of whether sole traders are embraced by the definition. Of course they are. Sole traders will be counted as Guyanese persons, and therefore, once you are a Guyanese, and Guyanese has a definition as well, the opposition wanted us to confine Guyanese only to Guyanese by birth. We rejected that. We believe that that is a myopic and a wrong definition, because the Constitution speaks to Guyanese by birth, Guyanese by descent, Guyanese by marriage, and the Citizenship Act speaks about Guyanese by naturalization. This very opposition that making so much noise and who have this great support base according to them in the diaspora, they essentially wanted to leave out tens of thousands of Guyanese in the diaspora because they were saying that only Guyanese who are born in Guyana must benefit. So all those Guyanese who are born in outside of Guyana but whose parents are Guyanese and who are entitled to Guyanese citizenship would have been excluded were we to accept, or did we accept the definition proposed by the opposition. That's the kind of divisive and myopic presentation and input they wanted for us to accept in the bill. And of course, we rejected that. Now we have a very wholesome definition of who's a Guyanese and what constitutes a Guyanese company. And you have to ensure that you play your part as well and get yourself on the register so that we can begin to start to recruit in a mass way Guyanese to work in the sector. As I said over and over again, the sector, the operators and the licensees are not very pleased with this arrangement. They would have preferred that we didn't impose local content legislation. They would have preferred that they were allowed free rein to employ who they wish. But we said no. We made a manifesto promise during the elections campaign that we will promulgate local content legislation, and we have done that. I will talk at length about the National Resource Fund bill at a later stage, but I want to pause here also to recognize our health workers who took care of us during the pandemic of 2021. They did a remarkable job as frontline workers, exposing themselves and exposing their families to the hazards of this deadly virus in order to protect us. And I want to take this opportunity to salute them for the remarkable work they have done during the year 2021, and to say to them that we expect them to continue to render the sparkling service that they have done to Guyanese in 2021 for the year 2022. I must here remark that unfortunately there is a very high spike in COVID virus based upon tests that have been conducted over the past week or so. The Minister of Health is on record as saying that we have had the highest number of tests, positive tests done since the virus started here some 1.5 years ago. So it is still very challenging. Fortunately, most Guyanese are now vaccinated, and many Guyanese have taken their booster shots. I want to take this opportunity to appeal to the Guyanese who are yet to take the vaccines and the booster shots to do so very quickly. It is the only thing that we know and that science knows that can protect us against the deadly virus. And that is why we are not hearing any great number of fatalities, although there has been an unusually high spike in COVID positive results. It is because the vaccines are working. It's because our bodies are now in a better position to fight the virus and to combat this dreaded disease. But if you are without vaccines, then you are not that fortunate, and you can succumb, as so many Guyanese have unfortunately done. I hope that I'm speaking to an intelligent audience and that you will not waste time anymore with the foolish rumors and the foolish speculations that have been made in relation to the vaccines. I hope that you have realized that sufficient number of persons have taken the vaccines and are now healthy, and despite the spike, they are coping well, and we are not having large number of persons being admitted into the COVID hospital. The only reason for that is because we have the vaccines, and the vaccines are doing their jobs, and the COVID boosters also are helping our immune system not to succumb to this deadly virus. So 2022 will again bring serious public health challenges, and we have to be prepared and we have to be vigilant to face those challenges and to overcome them. This is not a time to get sick, and this is not a time to die. This is a time to live. There is a lot to be living for, and there is a lot for our children to be living for, and we have to prepare this country for future generation. We have to prepare this country for the future, because the future for Guyana and Guyanese is a bright future. So the year 2022 is here with us, and I want to speak a little about the plans for the Legal Affairs Ministry in the year 2022. As expected, we have to continue to build the legal infrastructure for a modern Guyana, and we will continue to reform our archaic statutory framework and remove from it the anachronistic elements of our law and replace them with modern legislation that is geared to meet the developmental agenda of our country. We can't develop a country without a modern legal framework. We have to start to move our transactions to e-transactions in government. That by itself requires a series of legislation that will allow us for us to do transactions online in the public sector. Banking is already being done online in the private sector. We need to transact business in the public sector online. We need to make payments possible online. That requires an overhaul of the accounting infrastructure in the country, supported by relevant legislation to lay the foundation for these transactions to take place in the way electronically. And that is a major task that we will undertake in various sectors of the country. In preparation of Guyana's developing our food potential to feed the Caribbean, because that remains our primary objective in the agriculture sector. To feed the Caribbean, we now have to build that infrastructure that will allow us to produce and package food and export in accordance with international standards. Expectedly, the international requirements for the production, processing, packaging, and exportation of food is a high one, and we have to meet those international thresholds. That will require, again, us passing legislation to modernize the way that we package food and the way that we do agriculture, the way that we manufacture our agriculture. So we have bills like the Food Security Bill, the Food Safety Bill that we are working on. In the legal arena, we have a modern arbitration bill which I have just received from CARICOM. CARICOM just completed a modern arbitration bill, and I want Guyana to be the first country in the region to adopt that bill. It's a brand new bill. It embraces the international principles of arbitration. It brings on board the international standards when it comes to arbitration. So whenever we have disputes in the oil and gas sector or in the commercial sector at large, we don't have to necessarily go outside of Guyana to London, to Switzerland, to Singapore, to New York to resolve these disputes. We are going to be able to do that here. And CARICOM has presented us with a wonderful opportunity, a wonderful bill, along with a report, so we can read the report and understand the bill and adjust it to meet the exigencies of our dynamic society. Importantly, we are going to embark on training as well. So we are going to train a cadre of arbitrators, lawyers as well as non-lawyers, who can work in this sector. And this is something that is independent of and in conjunction with the judiciary, because one can choose whether one wishes to do arbitration within the legal system or arbitration extrinsic of the legal system. Both options will be made available in the model that we are pursuing. So that's a major piece of law reform that will take place. We have a bail bill, for example, that will come out soon, and that ought to address the discrepancies that one witnesses in relation to the grant and or refusal of bail. There are also another set of series of legislation that will come in the health sector. We are working on a new Public Health Act, a new Mental Health Act, a new Suicide Act, a new Domestic Violence Act, a new Sexual Offences, a revamp of the Sexual Offences Act. A sexual harassment bill is also being worked on. And in the area of commerce, I spoke about e-transaction and e-commerce. We will try to get out our hire purchase bill out of a select committee this year as well. And there are many, many pieces of legislation that is slated to be addressed this year. Another one that I omitted is we have a new condominium bill that is almost finished, and that will be laid in the Parliament within the first 2 months of this year. That will allow for the establishment of new condominium schemes in Guyana. A lot of investors want to invest in condominiums, and a lot of the investors, the operators within the oil and gas sector, they have expressed a preference for condominium-style accommodation for their companies. We are going to lay the statutory groundwork and framework for that. That bill is already completed. I can go on to list more, but I think that you get a clear idea that we have a packed legislative agenda for the Legal Affairs Ministry this year. This year also, we will be building a new building on the Essequibo coast that will house the Deeds and Commercial Registry in a spacious physical edifice. Right now, the operations are housed at the bottom of the Essequibo High Court in very cramped conditions. We plan to move that operation into a new building that will be included in the budget for 2022, and that will allow for greater efficiency in transactions on the Essequibo coast. Later in the year, we are hoping that we can do the same for New Amsterdam as well, where the Deeds and Commercial Registry Authority is housed beneath the Supreme Court or the High Court of New Amsterdam. Again, the conditions there are not acceptable, and it affects efficiency, it affects the staff being able to competently discharge the functions of their office. And we are hoping that we can secure a property this year and begin to work on acquiring a new building to accommodate that facility in the county of Berbice as well. This year also, work will begin on constitutional reform. You will recall that it's a manifesto promise of the People's Progressive Party that we will engage in constitutional reform. The consultation and the work will begin this year. The Parliamentary Standing Committee on Constitutional Reform will be the vehicle through which we will work to achieve that objective. We have had meetings already last year, but unfortunately with COVID and with so many other things, we did not get to accomplish much. Hopefully this year, just after the budget is read and passed, we will have the constitutional reform agenda kicking in, and we can begin the process of constitutional reform. 2022 will also see the completion of the statutory reforms that we are pursuing in the election sector. As you know, we have to rectify certain deficiencies in the law that were exploited by those who wanted to rig the 2020 elections. And we made a pledge and we made a commitment, both locally and internationally, that we will review the statutory process, both at the level of the Representation of the People's Act, as well as the registration process. And we will advance legislative proposals for reforms. One set of those proposals are already out there, and a consultative process has begun, and the other set will be launched shortly, very shortly. They are completed. They have to go through their final iteration and examination before they are made public, and then we will have to engage and take them to Parliament. So that is also slated for this year. Also, a very important development will take place this year, and that is the building of capacity in the prosecutorial arm of the state in the magistrates' courts across the country. We have already inked an agreement with the University of Guyana, whereby a program will start that will train persons who are the holders of LLB degrees to prosecute in the magistrates' court along with police officers. The criminal justice program will fund that out of the IDB, and hopefully we will be able to train 2 sets of prosecutors for this year, numbering nearly 60 to 70. And we will infuse that into the police prosecutorial system. And if we put, I believe, if we put prosecutors who have LLB degrees and then trained in a prosecutorial program designed by an expert, then I believe that the quality of service that we will get in the magistrates' court will be far superior than that which we are currently getting from the police officers. I don't want to knock the police officers here. I think they have done a remarkable job having regard to their limitations, but we simply can't continue like this. Victims of crime must feel that they are getting justice when they leave the precincts of the court. Right now, the accused have a lawyer, or the defendant has a lawyer, but the victims are represented by the police. And when the police is pitted against trained lawyers, you can have a very unfair relationship. This program intends to bring some greater balance to that relationship between prosecutor and defense counsel, so that the scales of justice are a little more balanced than they currently are. And people can feel that they are getting justice in the courts and they are getting their cases adequately ventilated in the courts, and the victims do not leave in this depressed way that no one's properly representing their interest. That is a major initiative, and it's very historic in my view. It's the first time that this initiative will be pursued in Guyana, and it would be the first of its kind in the English-speaking Caribbean, if not the English-speaking Commonwealth. Guyana will be leading the way in relation to that. So those are some of the main items that will be pursued at the level of the Legal Affairs Ministry. Of course, we have to continue to represent the government and the people of Guyana in all litigation, and we also have to provide legal advice to the government on a day-to-day basis and represent all the ministries and government agencies in the courts of Guyana. That remains the constitutional mandate of the Ministry of Legal Affairs. I am reading some of the comments. Flatty Singh, ACG, Pennsylvania. How are you, Flatty? Abdul Samad, Arjun Rajendra Singh, Wino Scholarships for Law Students, Liana Roberts, Well Said AG by Bansi Prasad, Wino Scholarship for lawyers. We are going to get there. We are going to get scholarships in every discipline. It just takes some time. Rome wasn't built in a day. Everything can't happen at the same time. Somebody said something about Haiti. I'm not going to bother with that. Flatty says, good comrade. Thank you, Flatty, for watching. You have been a very faithful participant in this program. Somebody is attacking somebody. I'm not going to get involved in that, but let's get back to the program. So a lot have been said about the National Resource Fund bill. And I want to spend some time to talk about that bill. First of all, there was a Natural Resource Fund bill that was passed by APNU AFC on the 3rd of January 2019. I want you to note this date. The no confidence motion was passed on the 22nd of December 2018, 2 days before Christmas. The 22nd of December 2018, the government was defeated by a no confidence motion. Now, that no confidence motion was adjudicated upon by the Caribbean Court of Justice in the case of Christopher Ram against the Attorney General and Bharat Jagdeo against the Attorney General in 2019. And this is what the CCJ said, and let me quote. In mandating that the government shall remain in office, notwithstanding its defeat and the resignation of the President and the Cabinet, Article 106 envisages that the tenure in office of Cabinet, including the President after the government's defeat, is on a different footing from that which existed prior to the vote of no confidence. Chancellor Cumming Edwards, citing Hogg, the Canadian constitutional expert, was right to note, and I quote, the government continues in office as a caretaker government or an interim government until the next elections, and a president is appointed or reappointed depending on the results of that election. By convention, the government is expected to behave during this interim period as a caretaker, and so restrain the exercise of its legal authority. It is this caretaker or interim role that explains the 3-month deadline in the first instance that the article lays down in principle for the holding of elections. As you know, they never held elections. They never behaved like a caretaker. They went a week after they were defeated and they passed the NRF bill by themselves. And these guys are talking about us rushing the bill through or rushing a bill through. They passed this bill a week after they were defeated by a no confidence motion. And they passed it by themselves. We were not even in the parliament. And these guys have the audacity to speak about us rushing the bill through. So they have no moral authority to speak about rushing this bill through because they did worse. At least we passed it while they were in the House. They passed it after they lost a no confidence motion, when they were in a caretaker mode and had no power to pass a legislation. And they passed it by themselves, alone in the House, in the darkness of night. There is nothing that these guys can stand and speak on with principle. Nothing. Just this one issue alone, their entire argument falls because they have done 10 times worse. So we made it very clear when we were in the opposition that we are not going to recognize anything done by this government outside of its caretaking mode. We made that point over and over again. We went to the people and we campaigned and we said that to the people. We're not going to honor their transactions in relation to land because they can't sell land if you're in a caretaker mode. A caretaker can't sell. A caretaker could only caretake. They can't pass legislation while they're in a caretaker mode. We made those points very clear. And we told the people of this country that we will review the bill, that we do not agree with the structure that they have used. And we said to the people of Guyana, at the beginning of the year 2021, that by the end of the year, we are going to pass the local content bill and the NRF bill. We said that from January 2021, that before the end of the year 2021, we are going to pass those two bills. We said it a million times. Why? How can you accuse us of rushing? What did we rush? When we promised since 2019, we are going to review the bill. And at the beginning of the year of 2021, we said by the end of the year, we will pass it. We took a long time to pass it. In fact, we should have been criticized for delay instead of rushing the bill through. And we said to the people, we went to the populace, we went to the electorate, and we explained what the APNU AFC bill had in it, and we said we are disagreeing with this structure. We said that we don't want the fund, the Natural Resource Fund, to be managed by a singular minister. We said that we want a board, more than one person to manage the fund. And that is what we have changed the bill to reflect. We said we don't want a heavy bureaucratic oversight committee. They have a 22 members oversight committee. We said that cannot work. That is an abdication of government responsibility. That will not work. You can't get 22 persons to make any sensible decision. Nothing will happen. We made that very clear. We said that we are going to embrace the Santiago Principles. And the Santiago Principles are expressly mentioned throughout. We spoke about a public oversight committee, and it is there. It has members of the private sector. It has a nominee from the leader of the opposition. It has members from different organizations. It's all there, but we don't have to follow their model. Their model can't work. That is our view, and we put that to the people, and the people elected us. The people said, go and implement your model. That is how we got into government. And we have a duty to implement that model. It's as simple as that. And that is what we did. And we have no apologies for saying so. And yes, we want the money to fund the budget. There's no secret about that. That is the whole reason for passing the bill, so that we can have access to the funds. We need the fund to develop Guyana. We went to the electorate with a manifesto of promises. We went to the electorate with a list of transformational projects that we have to deliver. And the people gave us the mandate to deliver. We have to get money to deliver on those projects. And the money is in that fund. And we have to take the money out to develop the country. What is wrong with that? That is how development takes place in every country in the world. No country keeps money in a fund when its peoples are starving, when you don't have money to fix basic infrastructure, when we don't have money to buy drugs and build hospitals. You want to have $40 billion in a fund or in a bank account, and your children are starving, and they can't go to school. Does that make sense? We don't believe in that kind of model. We said that we will use the money. And let me make this point. Those who are criticizing that NRF bill have obviously not read it, because if they read the two bills, they will see that it's about an 85% match. It's about an 85% match. We change only about 15% of the bill. We change the government structure. We reduce the powers from the Ministry of Finance, the Minister of Finance. We alter the mechanism to determine what amount will be drawn down. Their bill had a fanciful formula that doesn't allow you to determine how much money will be drawn down any given year. That depended upon some capricious formula vested in the Minister of Finance to calculate. They are speaking, we can look at a schedule that our bill has, and it has a breakdown in numerical form and percentage to show how much money is being drawn down every given year. They can point to their bill and say how much money will be drawn down. It depends upon some whimsical, capricious formula being used by the Minister of Finance to determine this nebulous amount. No certainty at all. We rejected that. And we went to the people and we explained all these formulations. And the people voted for us. They said, yes, you go and do what you have to do. You think we will abdicate our responsibility to the electorate and bother with a petition signed by I don't know how many persons who are calling themselves civil society? They did not go to the electorate. Nobody voted for them. We walked the length and breadth of this country. We walked through sun and through rain. We went into the interior, we went into the back dams, we went into the bottom houses, we went into the villages, we went into the towns, we went into the localities, and we talked to the people. I don't know that this grouping calling themselves civil society, they talk to anybody, and anybody gave them any mandate. We owe a responsibility to the electorate. We promised 50,000 jobs. We have to deliver that. We can't go and run to civil society and say, help us create jobs. So we have to ignore those people, unfortunately, when they want to trespass on governmental functions. We will not abdicate our responsibilities. We will not relinquish our governmental responsibilities over to some organization that believe that they are Guyana's conscience and the repository of Guyana's intellect and moral and spiritual standing. We are not going to do that. We made a pledge to the people of this country to deliver based upon a manifesto, and we have to get money to do so. And in any event, we are responsible for the money. We are responsible for the money. The people will hold us accountable. And there are sufficient mechanisms in the bill to allow for transparency and to allow for accountability. The monies are going to be sent to the consolidated fund. That is how all monies are paid into Guyana. And from the consolidated fund, it can only come out back through an appropriation process by the parliament, where the opposition are sitting, and where the press is there, and where it is streamed live. Every single Guyanese will see when the money is coming out through the parliamentary process. Don't they see that every year, every time we ask for money? That is how the system works. And the money can only be withdrawn for certain defined purposes in the law. National development, natural disaster. It can be used for luxuries. It can be used to sport. National development, infrastructural development. That is what it's being used for. Those are stated criteria in the bill, in the law. And if you deviate from that, you can go to jail. And all the receipts and all the proceeds from that fund will be advertised in the official gazette. The oversight committee shall prepare a report on the fund and send it directly to the parliament, not through the minister. Plus, the minister will also publish reports at certain intervals. then the Auditor General will audit every single cent. And also the Auditor General is empowered to hire an international auditing firm to assist him. So where is this big hullabaloo? Where is the basis for the concern? And every day I hear people talking about thieving bill and thieving bill. And they said that we have removed all the clauses dealing with penalties. It's a complete and utter lie. I have the relevant sections here. There's a whole section, part 8 of the bill, deals with penalties and offenses. A person who gives information that is materially false or misleading or knowingly includes or permit to be included in any report or document information that is materially false or misleading commits an offense and is liable to conviction and indictment to a fine of $10 million and to imprisonment for 5 years. That is one offense. Secondly, failure to publish. Any person who fails to comply with any obligation to publish information provided for in this act, or leads someone else to fail to comply, or hinders or leads someone else to hinder the compliance with the obligation, commits an offense and is liable to conviction and indictment to a fine of $5 million and imprisonment for 10 years. Another offense, a person who directly or indirectly hinders or leads someone else to hinder the exercise of powers by an external auditor under this act commits an indictable offense and is liable to a fine of $5 million and imprisonment for 3 years. A person who discloses information in violation of the act commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine of $5 million and imprisonment for 3 years. And I can continue a whole page of offenses. Yet I see people talking on TikTok and in the newspapers that there is no fines and there is no penalties. I don't know where they are getting these things from. We are not reading, and that is why we are allowing public space to be overtaken by ignorance and propaganda. We have to read. That's the only way that we can battle with this kind of misinformation that is permeating the airwaves and the social media and the newspapers. A newspaper journalist called me a short while ago to ask me how many persons will the president appoint under the act. And I said the law says very clearly the president can appoint 5 the most or 3 in the least. What is so mysterious to understand? He can appoint 5 members or 3. So he can appoint 5, 4 or 3. He can't appoint more than 5. He can't appoint less than 3. How is there ambiguity in that? And there's nothing abnormal about a formulation of language that allows an appointee a discretion in terms of how many persons he can appoint to a given tribunal. That's a regular formula that is used in statutory drafting in many statutes. So I don't understand the big hullabaloo that is being created by those who are critical. But we will maintain that we have the mandate of the people. We are responsible for public funds. And we have to ensure that we spend the public funds in a responsible manner. And we have to ensure that we deliver goods and services to the people of our country. That is what we were elected for. Those who want to do this must go and get elected. Go and run at elections and let the people elect you, and you can run your country. You can run your government. But we were elected to govern, and govern we will, in accordance with the laws and in accordance with the Constitution of Guyana. And we have no apologies to make for that. So I think I have spent a lot of time on this NRF bill, and I hope that I have brought clarity to a number of issues that I see festering in the public domain. I want to use this opportunity also to condemn in the strongest possible way the raucous behavior, the unruly behavior, and the thuggish behavior of the opposition. They have disrespected all parliamentary process and norms. They have violated all parliamentary doctrines and principles. They have invaded the well of the parliament. They have disrespected the authority of the speaker. They have removed the mace unauthorizedly from its symbolic position, all of which are parliamentary offenses that must be condemned. And I do so in the strongest possible way. And that is their behavior. And I'm happy. I am happy that they can have this display at periodic intervals. You know, people forgot that for 6 months they attempted to steal democracy in this country. They attempted to steal the people's ballots. For 6 months, sometimes we forget that. So then you see them in that obnoxious behavior, and then it comes back to you that these are the same set of miscreants who have a demonstrable allergy to democracy. They have a demonstrable allergy to democracy. What you saw there in Parliament was an attack on democracy, because the majority supposed to pass bills. That is how Parliament worked across the democratic world. But they don't have the majority, so they want to obstruct the passage of the bill. They want to frustrate Parliament from carrying out its mandate. And then they run away with the mace like common thieves, and then claim that because the mace is not there, the bill is not passed. If that is the law, well, then the law is an ass, and the law is not. Because any recalcitrant parliamentarian who doesn't get his way will run away with the mace, and Parliament will be unable to pass any law or perform its constitutional function and role. Is that the law? You can use your illegalities to cause Parliament of a country from discharging its constitutional mandate. The law doesn't reward one for one's misconduct. The law penalizes misconduct. It doesn't reward misconduct. If they are able to run away with the mace, and that will in effect prevent Parliament from passing laws, then the law is rewarding illegal and unruly conduct. The law doesn't do that. The law reprimands and admonishes unlawful and illegal conduct. So there is no system of law in any civilized country that will allow a man to run away with a mace because he doesn't agree with a bill, and then the law will hold that the bill was not properly passed. That is not the law of Guyana, and that's not the law of any country. Significantly, under our legal system, the courts have no jurisdiction to inquire into the proceedings of a parliament, except if there is an allegation that the Constitution was violated. That's the only role a court has to inquire into a parliamentary proceedings, because the Constitution is supreme. And if there is an allegation that the Parliament contravened the Constitution by the passing of a law, then the court has a jurisdiction. But the court can't inquire into what is called the intramural proceedings of a parliament in the absence of allegation that the Constitution has been violated. And you will note that no allegation has been made that any provision of the Constitution has been violated. There is no provision in the Constitution that speaks to a mace being in place when legislation are passed. No such requirement in our Constitution. And I challenge them to point to me where the Constitution says that before Parliament exercises its legislative authority to make laws, that a mace must be in place. The word mace is not even in the Constitution of Guyana. So it's a nonsensical argument. And the other argument I hear is that we were not in our seats. Well, I don't know. I was in my seat and I voted. And all you need is a majority of those present and voting. As far as I can recall, a majority of all of us were in our seats and we voted. And the Speaker's note will be conclusive evidence of the voting in the Parliament. And a court can't inquire behind that. A court can't inquire behind the Speaker's role, ROLL, the Speaker's role of how the voting took place, or the clerk's role is conclusive evidence of what transpired there. And the Speaker has already said that the bill has passed. So the arguments that they are bandying about are completely devoid of merit, and I challenge them to go to the court. Go to the court. Not a problem. But apparently, that is the new style of Mr. Norton. Permit me to offer my congratulations to Mr. Norton on his election as leader of the PNC. Unfortunately, he is not in Parliament. I understand that he was on the railway embankment giving directions for the misbehavior to take place in the Parliament. But if that is the style that he's bringing to the PNC, well, that's a matter for him and a matter for the PNC. If that's the type of leadership they believe is in their best interest, well, then they are free. Guyana is a democratic society, and they are free to pursue that type of behavior. The electorate is looking. The population is looking. The international community is looking. And they will be judged based upon their actions. That's all I have to say. But I am told that Mr. Norton would like to come into the Parliament. Well, he has to get someone recalled. I don't know how he will achieve that objective, but that's a matter for them. But I thought that I will congratulate him, because the PNC, as I continue to say, is a very important political party in our country. And we continue to hope and we continue to pray that at some point in time, they will begin to represent the people of Guyana and the people who voted for them in a responsible way. They are not doing that. Blowing whistle in the Parliament, falling down on your ass, grabbing the mace, calling people house slaves, trying to assault the Speaker, shouting and behaving as though you were in a marketplace, can't be the type of representation that you are offering to your people and to your constituency. But that's a matter for you. It depends on how long you want to stay in the opposition. And from all indication, you're going to be there for a very, very long time once you continue with this kind of approach to politics and behavior. My operator is signaling to me that we are approaching program time. I want to say good evening to Betty Singh, to Kemraj Mohabir, to Feroz Wahid, to Luana Rodriguez, and to Avinash. What is the status of the Amelia Falls project? That is another project that will come on stream this year. Were it not slashed and killed by the APNU AFC since 2018, we would have had electricity from that project at a fraction of the price that we are now paying for electricity. Rabindra Prasad, Rajendra Etwaru continue to look at this program. I want to thank you very much for the time that you have spent with me here over the past hour. I think we have now exceeded our time. I think we had a very, very healthy discussion. It's our first program for the year, and I want to thank you very much for joining me this evening, and let us continue to rock and roll for the rest of the year. Join me next Tuesday as we continue this important discourse. on the developmental agenda of our country as we discuss important events taking place here and across the Caribbean, but in particular in our country. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of the week. Take care and make sure you are vaccinated or you receive your booster shots. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the week.